Okay, who's the main character in regular show?
I don't know his name.
What does he look like? Because he's a very specific bold color. This is what I'm saying.
Yeah, you gotta know Webster though.
Everybody in my
not knowing
group.
Webster is like not knowing. Let me give you somebody. Who would Webster be if he was an artist? That's like not knowing. Give me somebody, Mo.
This is not a good example. I have a nigga know Arnold and Webster.
And I know who Arnold is, but
who's Arnold?
the nigga with the yellow.
No.
Yes,
See?
he is.
Oh my
Cartoon.
I'm not talking about niggas coming. Y'all might want to transfer out, do what y'all gotta do. Told these niggas it's the first day because they was like, they won one game previously that year and Coach Prime was not gonna let that happen. So he told them straight off, y'all might want to get in the portal. He told the quarterback that shit. I was like, damn, that nigga ruthless. In a good way, because it was a good way to say, you're not gonna get any run here. You might as well go figure it out now. I totally get it. But what you just said, Mo, is great too. We're in a situation, right, where young people are not knowing who these older players or older people or older entertainers or any of that is. And so like last year, right, when you first get there, the energy's good. Travis is there. Coach Prime just got there. Shador's there. So you got everybody coming through because there's new energy. You know, I went to a few games last year. I done seen Carmelo Anthony, the Kevin Durant, the Russell Westbrook, everybody was there. Offset was there. And it was just, everybody was there and that kind of died down. Because people don't know, Deion Cole, he's on Drink Champs, shout out to Noriega, Drink Champs and everything. And he made a really good point. Deion Cole's a comedian, really good comedian. And he made a point to where he was at the BET Awards, right, Mo? And they got Kai Cenat hosting it or whatever. And Kai Cenat's going around basically brushing off older stars now at the BET Awards. This is where you give awards and flowers to legacy artists or legacy entertainers or legacy athletes to where they've been doing their thing, and you're sitting there saying, this person has put 20 years of music in, this person has put 20 years as an athlete, this person has put 20, 30 years as an entrepreneur, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you got a 21-year-old hosting it, and when he goes around saying, I don't know these niggas get offended. While they ran down on the nigga. Yo, what the fuck is you got, my nigga? You trying to play me on Twitch? Fuck you got going on? I'll talk to you later. But to Kai Cenat's point, he don't know these niggas. He took a job, he came to do the job. To me, that's BET's fault. You put him in that position because he's lit, but not recognizing you put him in a position to diss niggas. Because Deion Cole said it wasn't just Wale. He said, Drewski knew who he was. He's like, yo, don't pay him no more, OG. And he said Drewski went up to Kai Cenat and was like, yo, that's the OG Deion Cole. And he was like, all right, what's up? And brushed him off too. You get what I'm saying? When you put people in these positions, they don't know the older artists, athletes, etc. The reason I'm even saying all that, Mo, is to go back to your point of when you said you got somebody in the locker room like Ray Lewis. And the kids probably don't understand what the fuck Ray Lewis about. They don't know the dance. Nigga did the, you know what I'm saying? They don't know all the shit this nigga did, my nigga. You know Ray Lewis dance? Exactly. You know,
I know who Ray is. I don't know the dance.
Dance is how you can't know Ray Lewis and don't know the dance. You gotta know the dance. Nigga do all type of shit and do some, you gotta know the Ray Lewis dance. But I respect that you don't. But this is what I'm talking about. You want Coach Prime to get niggas down there? Hire a young boy. Hire a young boy. They'll recruit everybody, nigga. Hire a young boy. Niggas will be flocking down there, say young boy coming in 3 games. Niggas will run to sign down there. And I'm being funny, but I'm not. You're not. That's what you gotta do, because that's the age group you trying to get.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
So I kind of want to add to that, because I am like very much a prime example of that. And it's not like I'm trying to be ignorant, and it's not like I'm trying to be disrespectful on purpose, because I think that sometimes people misconstrued like not knowing as far as like you're not willing to learn or you don't want to know. It's just literally different eras, different times.
Yeah.
Some people grew up on things that I didn't grow up same way. that I know of things that y'all might not have grown up with. Like a perfect example, and I'm gonna use one, even though like I do know who Wale is. I love his music, but he didn't in that situation. Me and Sin even argue about cartoons and stuff, and like Cam knows exactly because I can't even give you an example of the show because I don't even remember what he was saying.
Sin was mad. Me and Sin had a bet, and we called Stat on the three-way, and Sin was mad that she didn't know who Alf was. He caught a whole attitude. Then he got mad because she never heard of Webster. And so I bet him every person he named. I said,
you gotta know.
Why should she know who Webster is? That's why I won the bet. Stat is born in 2001. Webster came out in 1984. Like, how would niggas know? See, the reason why niggas like me, Murder, and even Mo to a certain extent, even though we a little older than Mo, the reason we know certain shit like Dennis the Menace or
Dallas
or the Beverly Hillbillies, because we had 13 channels. We didn't have 1,000 channels. We ain't have no fucking apps. We had to watch what was available to us. We didn't have a CD player in the beginning. We didn't have a tape. You turn the radio on, whatever's on the radio's on. Whatever's on NBC Thursday night, that's what's on NBC Thursday night. These kids got options.
A lot.
So my TV right now got 4,000 channels.
Yeah.
Like, yo, how the fuck she supposed to know Webster and Alf? And what was the last one? I don't think it's Punk.
Killer. She's
no, it was the Cosby
Webster.
Show. He was asking me about.
Yeah. Oh yeah, do she know little Rudy from the Cosby Show? She said the only nigga I know in the Cosby Show is Bill.
Yeah, that's all I got.
Mace, let me ask you a question. Why should she know?
He's a black boy.
What? That doesn't even make sense. That doesn't even. I could list 5 TV shows right now that
you should know
never,
black people.
No,
you should know your black history.
I could list 5 TV shows right now that you've probably never seen or heard of in your life.
Are they black people?
Yes, and they're cartoons.
Who?
You do know Regular Show?
You don't know Chowder?
I know Regular Show.
Okay, who's the main character in Regular Show?
I don't know his name.
What does he look like? Because he's a very specific, bold color. This is what I'm saying.
Yeah, you gotta know Webster though.
Everybody in my
not
group.
Knowing Webster is like not knowing. Let me give you somebody. Who would Webster be if he was an artist? That's like not knowing. Give me somebody, Mo.
This is not a good example. I would nigga know Arnold and Webster.
And I know who Arnold is, but
who's Arnold?
The nigga with the yellow.
No.
Yes, he is.
Oh my
cartoon.
I'm not talking about that.
Oh, well then I don't.
I'm talking about Arnold from Different Strokes Sports.
Oh, I definitely don't know that. I was like, Arnold, I know, like Rugrats, like all that group.
The reason I compared them to Webster, they too short people that never grew. They played kid characters, but they never grew. Nigga, yo, Murder, nigga since said, so you don't know the nigga that Michael Jackson used to be caught carrying around. He's talking about Webster. Yo, Stat said, I know the monkey.
Oh my God.
These young people so disrespectful.
It's not disrespectful. When I grew up watching TV and I seen even the Late Show, because I was even telling Cam a lot of things I wasn't even allowed to watch because it was inappropriate. Like my parents didn't let me watch curse words and stuff like that.
Yo, Murder, she couldn't watch Ted when it first came out.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's
almost like when young guys be talking to Charles Barkley crazy. It's the same kind of thing for me. It's like, nigga, that's Sir Charles, man.
And I could see how it's viewed that way, but we're consuming so many different things and there's like overconsumption. You cannot expect me to know every single thing that's going on that y'all grew up with, because like Cam kind of said, you guys had it on display. I would have to go back and you have to find reruns. Like they're not even playing the same SpongeBob episodes.
You know who
that
Martin
they started out
is,
with.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, you good.
But I didn't watch that. Like that wasn't for me.
But
that wasn't
you know
my
who
time.
it is.
Yeah, I've seen the show, but I've never watched it.
See,
like
Martin's
I couldn't
different.
tell you
Martin's
what.
and Bad Boys. Like Martin stayed relevant. Webster been missing since Webster.
Yeah.
Like Nick, you know Webster?
He doesn't
Nick
either.
don't know Webster.
Nick doesn't know Webster.
Yo, Mo, you know Webster?
Al Bundy. Nick knows Al Bundy.
I don't don't know.
Yeah, I would have bet that Nick knew who Webster was, though.
Nick is from fucking Spain or something. Nick is over there from Greece. He don't know that shit. He just learned English like 7 years ago,
That's
bro.
crazy.
There's only 2 black shows that I know, and it's like my parents would have to force it on. I couldn't tell you which was literally Homie the Clown and In Living Color, and I didn't grow up watching those. That's the only 2 I can
Okay, you saved yourself.
save myself.
But
Yeah, you saved
that's
Now, Sin lost mad bets. The nigga Mo, not to cut you off, this is the last word I want you to say. Nigga Sin lost $42 in 6 different bets. She said she gotta know who Rakim is. I said she's not gonna know who Rakim is. We call Stat. He said, what you think when I say Eric B? She said, I don't know. She said, you know who Rakim is? She said, no. Then he gets mad at her for not knowing the shit. And then Stat asks her parents, and then her parents say, yeah, that was my favorite group growing up.
Literally. I'm like, y'all.
Listen, let me tell you something.
Yeah, I see why they mad with her.
But this is what I'm gonna say.
She should know this.
But this is what I'm gonna say. My favorite group would never be my mother's favorite group. That's just me.
But you should know your mother's favorite group.
Nah, Murder. I just think that you don't realize the options that these kids have.
No, I know. I'm saying, like, you knew your mother's favorite group. Like, I know my mother's favorite group.
I don't know my mother's favorite group. Well, I didn't listen to a lot of music. The only time I really listened to music in the East Side Blood House. My house was not really a music house.
Different lives. So, Maurice, you had a quick take before we wrap.
Yeah, no, it was just in reference to the Deion Cole interview. I seen the clips he was talking about, and just to clarify, he was really. I think like once you find out who somebody is, and I think how you go about just even showing basic respect and just like being dismissive, I think he was talking more about that, and I do agree with him with that. Like, you know, once somebody's done something of significance that really people don't do every day. And you're at a show honoring people, you know that these people who walking down this red carpet or these people moving in these places that are secluded, there's somebody. So I think that it's a basic etiquette that he was saying that you should have. And so that was my interpretation of it.
Really quick though, I will say sometimes it's hard to navigate that because if there's so many, obviously if there's maybe 2 or 3 people, you should do your due diligence, which is something that I try really hard to do because I never want to come across as disrespectful because I know I'm around, you know, like people who have been doing their thing forever, legends, all that. But sometimes in a space, especially if you're younger, you can't go up and ask somebody like, is that, like, you kind of have to be able to fall on the ropes and fall in line. So in every case, that is not an option.
He's talking about the disregard though. You know, the disregard for is like when you find out who the person is, is the attitude that you keep after you find out who he is. So the whole fact of not knowing, not knowing who a person is, that's just willful ignorance. But once you know who this person is, to act like they're not important is what he's talking about. And young people do that because we was all young at one time. I'd be like, yo, there goes such and such. You know how we would kill him.
You do it now.
Amen. And on that note, unless you got a final word, Dr. Betha.
You're right. That's how I know what he's talking about. Yeah.
All right, this clip has been living rent-free in my head ever since I saw it because it perfectly captures one of those moments when a group of grown adults, people who are supposedly connected to the same culture, suddenly discover just how ridiculous a generational gap can become. And believe me, we're not talking about a small age difference here. We're talking about a massive divide. A divide so wide that one side is casually bringing up references from 30 or 40 years ago, while the other side is looking around like everybody suddenly switched languages. That's exactly what happened during this podcast conversation. And by the time everything was said and done, Cameron and the rest of the crew were absolutely floored by the things Stat had never even heard of. But before we get to the part that really made everybody lose it, we need to back up for a second. Because this conversation didn't begin with old television shows or legendary hip-hop groups. It actually started with football. More specifically, it started with Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, and the culture he established after taking over a college program that had won only 1 game the previous season. Seriously, think about how bad that situation was. This was a program that had basically vanished from the national spotlight, a team that most people outside its home state probably weren't paying attention to at all. Then, suddenly, one of the most decorated and outspoken personalities in sports walks through the door carrying himself like the place already belongs to him. And from day one, he looked those players directly in the eye and made it clear that if winning and becoming great weren't their priorities, they should probably start looking for another school. There was no gentle transition, no easing everybody into the new reality. He even told the quarterback directly that competition was coming, and if competing for that starting job wasn't something he could handle, then he needed to get comfortable with the idea of playing somewhere else. Now, one of the hosts brought up that story as almost a compliment. The basic message was, yes, that's extremely ruthless, but being ruthless isn't automatically the same thing as being disrespectful. In this situation, the argument was that the pressure served an actual purpose. It forced everyone in that room to either rise to the challenge or get out of the way. And that small point eventually opened up a much bigger discussion, because all of a sudden, the conversation moved beyond football, became a question about whether younger generations today, and we're talking about people in their late teens and early 20s, actually know the older athletes, entertainers, and cultural figures who helped create the world they're currently living in. One of the hosts pointed out that when this football program suddenly became a national sensation and Coach Prime had everybody watching, the sidelines were packed with recognizable celebrities. Former MVPs, legendary athletes, musicians, and major stars were showing up simply because they wanted to experience the moment firsthand. But as that initial excitement started cooling down, many of those famous faces weren't showing up nearly as much because a significant chunk of the younger audience didn't even recognize who those legendary people were. The stadium environment that had once been filled with familiar stars gradually started losing that element. And it wasn't necessarily because the program itself had become boring or irrelevant. It was because those legendary names didn't carry the same weight for younger viewers once the excitement of something brand new began disappearing. And that exact idea eventually led into a story involving the BET Awards, which might honestly be the moment from this entire clip that creates the biggest reaction. So this is where things get really interesting. A famous comedian appeared on a popular podcast and shared a story about a younger co-host who had been brought in to help present awards that year. The issue wasn't necessarily that this younger person didn't recognize every veteran legend walking around the red carpet, because let's be honest, that can happen. The real problem, according to the comedian, was the reaction that came after the person was told exactly who those legends were. Instead of suddenly realizing they were standing around people who had spent decades building major careers in music, film, sports, or business, the response apparently came off as almost completely dismissive. It was as if none of those accomplishments carried any real significance, like somebody's entire legacy somehow mattered less simply because it was created before this younger person's own frame of cultural reference existed. And of course, social media immediately went into overdrive. Plenty of people believed the comedian was highlighting a genuine problem with respect. And to be fair, that absolutely was part of his argument. But he also made it clear that blaming the younger co-host entirely wouldn't be fair either. In his view, the event organizers deserved a huge share of the criticism because they placed someone in that situation without giving them the necessary background. They should have explained who those people were, what they accomplished, and why those names carried so much weight before putting them in front of the cameras. You can't simply hand somebody a microphone, place them next to cultural icons, and then expect them to somehow know decades of history that nobody ever took the time to teach them. So that's the foundation. That's basically the appetizer before we reach the moment that sent this entire conversation into another gear. Because then, one of the podcast hosts decided to turn the whole discussion back toward the room. Specifically, they pointed directly at their own co-host, someone the crew calls Stat, who suddenly became a walking example of the exact generational disconnect they had been discussing. And to Stat's credit, she didn't become defensive or try to argue her way out of it. Instead, she leaned into the conversation and essentially explained, "It's not like I'm purposely trying to be unaware. It's not that I don't want to learn. We just grew up in different generations, and what people absorb depends heavily on the era and environment they grew up in." Stat even brought up disagreements she'd had with another co-host over cartoons, specifically cartoons from years ago. Those references simply weren't part of her childhood because she was born in an entirely different decade. But then, the story suddenly took a turn nobody saw coming. Apparently, there was money involved, an actual wager, real cash was sitting on the line, and somehow the whole situation started with a phone call. Stat was placed on the spot during a three-person conversation and asked point-blank if she knew a particular legendary hip-hop artist. When she admitted that she didn't really know who they were, the reaction around her was basically pure shock. But the crew wasn't satisfied with stopping there. They immediately brought up another massive name from that same era of hip-hop, and once again, Stat had no idea who they were talking about, no recognition whatsoever. And right when everyone thought the situation had reached its limit, they decided to take it one step further and call her parents to see if the story could actually be verified. And sure enough, her own mother confirmed that the exact artist they had asked about was actually one of her favorite artists when she was growing up. At that moment, the entire room erupted because now this wasn't just a case of an older generation failing to connect with Stat. It looked like an entire piece of cultural information had somehow jumped right over one generation within her own family. And somehow, the conversation became even funnier from there, because once the bet was settled and the money changed hands, everyone shifted the conversation toward television. We're talking about old-school cable favorites, the kinds of shows that helped define a major era of Black culture while eventually becoming fixtures of mainstream American entertainment. And this is where Cameron genuinely couldn't believe the responses he was getting from Stat. It started off innocently enough. Somebody brought up a legendary sitcom from the 1980s, built around a young boy with an instantly recognizable appearance, a character who became so deeply embedded in pop culture that his name eventually turned into a shortcut for describing an entire type of comedic personality. And Stat? She had absolutely no clue who they were even talking about. Zero. Not even a flicker of recognition. Just that completely blank stare that instantly makes people who grew up watching the character realize how much time has passed without stopping to ask permission. But the insanity didn't stop with that one missed reference, because once the first name went completely over her head, the crew started digging through even more classic television moments to see just how enormous this generational divide really was. They brought up another legendary sitcom, this time about an alien living with an ordinary suburban family, also coming from that same golden era of television, and once again, Stat was looking at them like they were speaking another language. At that point, one of the hosts jokingly raised his hands like Stat had just committed an unforgivable crime against Black television history. Then they decided to travel even further back, bringing up a legendary family sitcom widely regarded as one of the most influential and successful shows ever built around a Black family on network television. And when they started testing Stat on individual characters from that series, including one of the younger daughters, the only name she could confidently identify was the father, the central figure of the entire show, and probably the one character almost anybody recognizes regardless of their age because of how enormous that actor's career eventually became. That's when one of the hosts, jokingly, but with a little real frustration underneath it, brought race into the conversation, basically arguing that these weren't just random old sitcoms, but major pieces of Black cultural history that people should know something about. It almost sounded like he was proposing a mandatory crash course in the history of Black television. But then another host pushed back immediately and made a point that honestly changed the whole conversation. The same rule has to work in reverse. He started bringing up newer animated series aimed at younger audiences, including programs featuring Black characters and creators, and then turned the question back on the older hosts to see whether they knew those references. And wouldn't you know it, they didn't. They couldn't name the characters, they didn't know the plots, they were just as lost as Stat had been moments earlier. And honestly, that might have been the most important moment of the entire discussion, because it completely flipped the original argument on its head. The problem isn't simply that younger people don't recognize older culture. Older generations can be equally disconnected from the entertainment and references that shaped younger people's childhoods. Nobody possesses a perfect timeline of every generation's cultural history, and expecting one age group to instantly understand every reference from another era is probably an impossible expectation. But that realization didn't slow down the jokes, because the crew immediately brought up another classic 1980s sitcom, this time centered around two brothers who looked dramatically different, with one clearly being shorter and younger looking than the other. And once again, Stat had nothing, no clue, no recognition, nothing at all. That's when one of the hosts made a hilarious observation, pointing out that this character and the earlier alien character shared the same bizarre quality of supposedly being kids, while somehow never seeming to grow, age, or look like normal children. It was almost as if both characters had been locked inside some permanent television time warp. And honestly, when you think about it, that's a pretty accurate description of both of them. Then somebody brought up another piece of wild pop culture trivia involving one of the biggest musicians in history, a superstar who famously kept a very young celebrity around him during one of the strangest periods of his career. And once again, Stat knew only the surface-level part of the story, without being able to identify the actual person or explain the history behind the reference. By this point, everyone was laughing, shaking their heads, and clearly amazed at just how many cultural references were completely missing from Stat's radar. And when they started testing other crew members who were actually around Stat's age, they discovered that some of them were equally clueless about the same references. So at that point, it became obvious this wasn't simply about Stat being disconnected from pop culture, because the more people they questioned, the clearer it became that this was a legitimate generational phenomenon, rather than one person's lack of knowledge. Stat then tried to explain her side of the story, and honestly, once you hear her reasoning, it starts making a lot more sense than people might initially assume. She explained that her childhood wasn't built around watching whatever happened to be on network television, simply because there were no other options. She grew up in an entertainment world overflowing with choices, streaming services, on-demand shows, endless channels, and countless apps, all competing for the same limited piece of your attention. Meanwhile, when the older hosts were growing up, there were only a handful of channels available. So when a particular show aired at a specific time, that was basically your entertainment choice, because there weren't dozens of alternatives waiting for you. If your favorite program came on Tuesday night at 8, you watched it Tuesday night at 8, because the other options might have been static, a rerun you'd already seen, or absolutely nothing worth sticking around for. Now put that next to the way people consume entertainment today, where someone can spend 20 minutes scrolling through an endless library without actually picking anything, because there is simply an overwhelming amount of content available every second. And that explanation actually connected with some of the older hosts, because even if they weren't eager to admit it, they recognized there was something legitimate about today's media overload. It is incredibly difficult to expect someone to absorb several decades of cultural history when that same person is being bombarded with new movies, shows, clips, songs, and trends every single day, sometimes within the same hour. That doesn't automatically mean someone is disrespectful or ignorant. Sometimes it's simply the result of having an absurd amount of entertainment competing for a very limited amount of attention. There was also an interesting side discussion about how this same phenomenon impacts older public figures, particularly athletes, who can sometimes be dismissed by younger fans or commentators, simply because those younger audiences never watched them dominate their sport in real time. It's really the exact same cultural disconnect showing up in another arena. Respect is often created through shared memories and experiences, and when two people were born decades apart and never experienced those moments together, that emotional connection doesn't magically appear just because someone tells them it should. Eventually, the conversation returned to its central point, and one of the hosts made what I think was probably the most important distinction of the entire segment. He explained that simply not recognizing somebody isn't automatically the problem. Nobody expects everyone to carry a mental encyclopedia containing every athlete, entertainer, musician, or cultural icon who existed before they were born. The real problem starts when you discover who that person is and then intentionally decide that their accomplishments are meaningless. That's the exact point where simple unfamiliarity can turn into intentional ignorance. That's when not knowing crosses the line into disrespect. If you've never heard of a person before, that's completely understandable, especially when different generations have been raised on completely different media. But once someone explains that person's impact and you still dismiss it like it has no value, that's an entirely different issue. And that's really why this clip resonated with so many people once it started spreading online. The conversation was never truly about whether Stat recognized a specific sitcom character or knew a legendary rap group from decades ago. It's connected to a much larger cultural debate happening everywhere, from sports and music to entertainment, social media, offices, and even family gatherings, where older people sometimes feel like the things that define their lives are disappearing, while younger people feel like they're constantly being judged for not knowing material from a media landscape they never grew up with. And the reality is, the world they were raised in really was completely different from the one their parents and older siblings knew. Meanwhile, Cameron spent nearly the entire conversation laughing in disbelief as he kept tossing out reference after reference, desperately hoping something would finally click, only to receive another blank reaction every single time. And by the end, it didn't even feel like Cameron was genuinely mad about it. He seemed more fascinated than anything, almost like he had suddenly been reminded that he's getting older, because things that seem like basic cultural knowledge to him can feel like ancient history to someone who wasn't even around when those shows first hit television. And honestly, that's probably the exact reason this clip is so entertaining to watch. It's funny, it's chaotic, and somehow there's actual cash on the line because of one completely absurd bet. But underneath all the laughter and disbelief, there's something surprisingly relatable taking place. Almost everybody has experienced that moment when you mention something you assumed literally everyone knows, only to receive that completely blank look from someone younger. And sometimes age isn't even the explanation, because you can meet somebody older who somehow missed the exact same movie, show, song, athlete, or cultural moment you're talking about. When you take a step back, this entire conversation becomes a pretty accurate picture of the larger generational debate playing out across the internet right now. It's nostalgia versus modern relevance, old-school shared experiences versus individualized entertainment, and honestly, neither side automatically deserves to be labeled the villain. It's simply what happens when the media environment changes dramatically over the course of a few decades. What used to be a shared cultural experience, where millions of people watched the same handful of shows because there were only a few real options, has transformed into a personalized entertainment universe where two people separated by only 10 or 20 years can grow up knowing almost completely different cultural references. So yes, Cameron was stunned. The rest of the crew was stunned too. But once you understand the environment Stat actually grew up in, her lack of recognition starts making a whole lot more sense. It isn't automatically ignorance, it isn't automatically disrespect. Sometimes it's simply the result of growing up in a different era, having access to completely different entertainment, and living in a world where you could choose what to watch, instead of being limited to whatever happened to be on. And honestly, that might be the biggest takeaway hidden inside this entire hilarious exchange. Before labeling someone culturally clueless because they don't recognize a particular reference, maybe we should first consider when they grew up and what kind of media they actually had access to, instead of immediately assuming they deliberately ignored something important. And that's really the heart of why this viral moment hits so hard. The longer you think about it, the funnier the whole situation becomes, but somehow it also becomes more thought-provoking. If you enjoyed this breakdown, let me know in the comments which classic show, movie, artist, or cultural moment you think should be required knowledge for everybody, no matter what generation they belong to.